Afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. It's Danny Dhaiphong here. Welcome back to another Left Lens live stream. Let me know how I sound. Am I loud enough? Um, like the stream as you come in, of course. Like the stream as you come in. Be sure to share the stream as you are also watching, if possible. I'm just going to say hello to those in the chat first, usually how I start these things off now. So, yeah, welcome again. Welcome. Good afternoon. Just my luck, another thunderstorm. So, my dog is definitely scared of thunder. So, he'll probably be wandering around this area. It is ridiculously hot. It's like 90 plus degrees with 100% humidity like every single day. We got a heat wave going on. But yeah, like the stream, share it around. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Be sure to hit that notifications bell so you know when I'm live. Not sure how many people we're going to get in today at this hour, but I did want to get back on live for all of you. And of course, things are tough. People are emailing me saying that they're leaving as members. Times are hard economically. Still looking for 500 Patreon subscribers, but I've already had some pretty huge losses in the last few days as we near the end of the month. So please do help sustain this channel at patreon.com/Danny Dhaiphong. That's patreon.com/Danny Dhaiphong. This is the way of capitalism right now. People are having a really hard time, so I hope you all are out here surviving as best you can. So yeah, let me just say hello to those in the chat. Give some time for people to come trickling in. Hello, Moonwalk 689. Hello. Hello, S.A. Malik. It is starting. We have started. Hi, Ware. Good to see you. Hi again, S.A. Malik. Hi, Big Teal. Good to see you again. Good to see you again, Loa Socialisti. Good to see you again. Hold on one second, guys. Hold on one second. We're gonna have to hold on. The thunder is scaring my dog too much. I've got to gate him off even more. Hold on one second. I am back, everyone. Sorry about that. Please do continue to like the stream and share it. Unfortunately, my dog is definitely afraid of thunder, and he runs to the front door. But I've baited the front door with all kinds of cockroach gel. This might be too much information, but the side of my building and my apartment building is infested with cockroaches, and they love to congregate by the front door because that's where they're coming in. And so I've put a lot of gel bait there for them to kill themselves with. And so I can't have him over there. So I've got to gate him over here. And so there's a thunder. Yeah, I know, another thunderstorm. It doesn't seem as bad as last time in terms of the noise factor, but he can hear it. He's shaking like crazy, and that's just the way it goes. Anyway, good to see you, Lewis. Good to see you, Holly. Good to see you, Optimism of the Will. Yes, Thunder again. Good to see you, Dale Sendero. Good to see all of you. Good to see all of you. Keep liking the stream. Good to see you, Nadia. Good to see you. Thank you all for coming. Please do continue to like the stream, share it wherever you can. Hit that like button. And of course, please do subscribe at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong to support the channel. We've had, unfortunately, a lot of people say that they just can't keep it up. The cost of living is going too high. There was a recent study done showing that unfortunately most people making between $30,000 to $100,000 a year, they call that middle class, are unable to keep up with the cost of living. Their incomes, they are saying, are falling well behind. That's more than 3/4 of these folks. These are working class people, mind you. Most working class people who make between 30,000, most people who make between 30,000 and 100,000 are still working class people, or they are pauperized, so-called middle class, quote unquote, or professional class people. But nonetheless, they are living more and more precariously, because $30,000 to $100,000 per year doesn't get you where it used to get you. So with that said, though, yeah, we got somewhat of a packed program. I didn't want to make it too packed today. I do have to leave pretty sharply at around 2:30 at the latest. So I didn't want to make it too packed, but I wanted to react to a few things. Of course, I want to react to the AOC, the squad antics, but not just in the context of what they were doing, but more so what they were doing at this abortion rights rally, but more so what they were doing just before that, which to me is more significant than whatever performance they are putting on. That's a poor one. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to talk about these increases in the military budget, the increase in the military budget that just got passed by the House. We're going to talk about that as well. Okay. So that's what we're going to do today. Yeah, and keep liking the stream. Keep liking the stream, keep sharing the stream. We're going to get right to it in a second here. All right. So what do we talk about first? Well, let's just get right to it with this unhinged militarism, right? So as you all might know, the United States military budget just goes up and up and up and up and up. It never decreases, right? There's austerity for everyone else. There's austerity for the working class, for the poor. There's austerity of social programs, of the public sector. But there's one section of the public sector that never is a victim of austerity. And you can bet that it's always the military. It's always the so-called quote unquote defense budget. Well, we have another military budget increase coming our way. Okay. And that military, I'm going to pull up the Times article about it. I don't know why it's all highlighted. Here we go. The House has just passed. This was not too long ago. This was just a week ago, and we know that the Biden is going to sign off on it. But the House recently passed. Senate's going to unanimously sign off on this. The $840 billion military policy bill, they're calling it. And the House moved to increase Biden's requested budget, Pentagon budget, by $37 billion, reflecting a growing bipartisan appetite in Congress to raise military spending. So we should note that Joe Biden is a war hawk, and so he wanted to increase it to $800 billion. And then Congress said, the House said, and the rest of Congress, the Senate and the House, they said, well, how about we add on $37 billion more dollars? And we have to remember now that that Congress is a slight majority Democrat, right? It's basically tied, but Kamala Harris has the tie-breaking vote. So in a sense, this is a Democratic Party-led Congress, at least in just sheer numbers. Of course, they're always playing the outsider card. We're too weak, the filibuster, all of that. But the filibuster is never a problem with this question, right? We don't get these heated debates about how much we should be spending on the military. And so the New York Times says the House on Thursday passed an $840 billion military policy bill that would increase Biden's requested Pentagon budget by $37 billion, reflecting a growing bipartisan appetite in Congress to raise military spending amid new threats from Russia and China. It's always about Russia and China at this point. The legislation would grant a 4.6% pay raise to military personnel, limit the Biden administration's ability to sell F-16 fighter jets to Turkey, and require top national security agencies to report on and combat white supremacist and neo-Nazi activity in federal law enforcement and armed forces. While the measure drew wide bipartisan support, passing 329 to 101, Republicans had unanimously opposed the mandate to root out white supremacy, arguing that no such effort was needed. So what's hilarious about that is that the United States is arming neo-Nazis in Ukraine. It has been for 8+ years, arming neo-Nazis in Ukraine and also placating white supremacists and Nazis at home. And just this small measure in this bill drew the ire of the white man's party, which is the Republican Party. But that's a very small. I love how the liberal class loves to put this in there as if that's a significant part of this budget, right? There's no way that paperwork and some minor bureaucracy in reporting these activities comes anywhere close to the reasons why this is being increased to such a huge degree, right? Doesn't come anywhere close to the reasons for that. And so the New York Times continues, the legislation will grant, it says the bill contains provisions aimed at mitigating civilian deaths and injuries caused by U.S. military operations and authorizing $100 million for assistance to Ukrainian pilots. So another $100 million to Ukraine. And it would repeal the 2002 law authorizing the invasion of Iraq, which has been stretched by multiple administrations to justify military actions around the world. So more money for the military, yet supposedly a stripping of the budget of the law that allowed for the invasion of Iraq. It seems like that's a couple of decades too late, but who am I to say? But that's a couple of decades too late. We have a complex threat environment when you look at China, Russia, China, and Iran, said Representative Adam Smith, Democrat of Washington and chairman of the Armed Services Committee. The war in Ukraine is a devastating threat to peace, stability, and democracy, not just in Eastern Europe, but across the globe, that we are working with partners to try to address. So we have to make sure that we have a strong bill, meaning, yeah, we want to wage endless war in Ukraine. Iran and China are huge threats to us because we always need another threat. These countries may not pose any kind of military threat because none of them want war with the United States. But yet, we need more money. We need more money. We need more weapons. We need to boost the military-industrial complex more and more and more and more. That's basically what this is saying. We have so House Democrats initially proposed meeting Biden's military budget, but a bipartisan group on the Armed Services Committee overwhelmingly supported by a measure by Representative Jared Golden, Democrat of Maine, to increase the amount by roughly 4.6%. Look at that. Jared Golden, a Democrat of Maine, spearheaded the effort to increase the military budget. Now, do you see why we call the Democratic Party the war party? That's the reason. We call the Democratic Party the war party because they're literally leading us into more war spending. They're literally doing that. This is not hyperbole. Many people think that's hyperbole. It's not. We need to look at world events in Ukraine, read reports regarding China's plans and actions in the South China Sea, or simply read the latest headlines about Iranian nuclear ambitions and North Korean missile tests, as well as ongoing terrorist threats, in order to see why this additional funding is necessary to meet the security challenges of our time. Meaning, all you need to do is listen to our lies about war so we can fund more war. By contrast, a perennial effort led by Representative Barbara Lee, Democrat of California, to reduce the Pentagon's budget this year by $100 billion failed on Thursday on the House floor in a resounding show of bipartisan opposition, 350 to 78. That means a majority of Democrats voted against it because the House is still in Democratic Party control. So they opposed Barbara Lee's very minuscule effort to reduce the budget by roughly 10%. That should give us pause about how the Democratic Party is the war party. The Republican Party certainly is no enemy of war and certainly supports war. But the Democratic Party, when they have power, are willing to expand the war machine, which they do have, quote unquote, power right now. They may not want us to believe it, but they do. And they've had it ever since Joe Biden came into office with the slight majority in Congress. So also included in the military policy bill are a slew of measures aimed at mitigating civilian deaths and injuries caused by military operations. They already said this, so here's how they're trying to sanitize you by repeating over and over again the few provisions in this bill that would be of so-called benefit to anyone except the war machine. So there was a New York Times report, so the New York Times is taking credit for this, that showed that the U.S. air campaign against the Islamic State has been marked by flawed intelligence, confirmation bias, and scant accountability, meaning that you need more effective war making, which costs more money. See, we always have to reinterpret what they're saying here because they're trying to tell you that that's a good thing, that now they need more accurate intelligence, more more accountability to be more effective at fighting ISIS, which the United States has never been in the business of doing. The United States has laid the conditions for ISIS ever since the U.S. Invaded Afghanistan using proxies like the Mujahideen in 1979. That's how ISIS came about, through a long 40-year process that included many U.S. military interventions and many direct examples of the U.S. arming and training certain factions of al-Qaeda to fight their dirty wars. And then lo and behold, these forces aren't trustworthy, and they end up forming a separate organization that has absolutely no interest in cooperating with the United States, except when the United States decides they want to help them, which is what the United States has done many times in Syria, for example. So even though ISIS will never proclaim any loyalty to the United States, surely they love when the U.S. so-called coalition of the willing in Syria bombs Deir ez-Zor or some region of Syria and then allows ISIS to try to lay siege to it. That was happening all across, that was happening all in the hot points, the flash points of the war on Syria from 2014, 2015, and then it kind of ramped down after Syria made huge gains toward Idlib province. But still, Syria remains mired in this war because these forces don't stop, right? So this is what the United States wants to do. It wants to keep up wars like the dirty war on Syria by making them more effective, and the Democrats are leading that. The legislation would establish a commission on civilian harm composed of a dozen expert civilians appointed by Congress to investigate a representative sample of incidents of civilian harm that occurred where the United States used military force. Lawmakers also voted to add the military policy bill, an amendment that will require top national security agencies to report on and combat white supremacists and neo-Nazi activity. All BS. The United States has no interest in reducing neo-Nazi and white supremacist activity beyond a superficial level. So this isn't going to go anywhere. This is all about war. I don't even want to read the rest of this because it's not telling me, it's just repeating what it said in the beginning. This is how they like to keep you reading. But the real story here is that the Democrats, which have a majority in Congress, at least a slight majority, they unanimously, this isn't like, oh, this was close, oh, there was opposition, ooh, there was a split vote. No, this was a unanimous adoption, a unanimous show of support for $37 billion more dollars than what Joe Biden requested. This happened during Trump as well, where Trump, I think, proposed something like 700 billion, and then they tacked on another 40 billion, right? This just continues to happen over and over and over again when it comes to the U.S. military budget. And the reason why this is important is because, another reason why this is important, because there's many reasons why. One of the things they don't tell you about this military budget and the deliberations about it and what is going to be included in it is that there's a resolution that's going along with this military budget that basically pledges support for Finland and Sweden to join NATO. And if you thought that the unanimous vote by the Democrats for the increase in the military budget overall was bad, just wait till you hear that only 18 Republicans were the ones to say no to Finland and Sweden joining NATO in this resolution. Now, I don't know about you all, and this includes the squad. That's why I included the squad here. So we're going to talk about them. They all voted for Sweden and Finland to join NATO. And the reason why that's a problem, and that should be seen as a problem, is that despite however normalized this endless war regime and NATO's expansion has become, this provocation alone has been specifically cited by Russia's government as being another red line which will cause Russia to defend itself by stationing nuclear weapons on its borders pointed at these countries in self-defense, knowing that military operations, drills, and nuclear weapons likely will be stationed, or the whole point is that if you join NATO, you automatically are part of this nuclear arsenal that the United States and its partners have stockpiled. So if you join NATO and the mission is to contain Russia, is to provoke Russia, which it is, they don't say it is, but it is, then of course Russia is going to say, well, anyone who joins NATO is going to be a country that we are going to watch over and target with our own nuclear arsenal as a preventative measure. We are going to deter that kind of activity. That's why Russia would put weapons on its border. So there would never be an opportunity for a NATO country, now Sweden or Finland, to do that to them, right? This is how war works. You don't just wait to get nukes dropped on you, right? And Russia's not going to wait for that, which is why this move is so dangerous, because Sweden and Finland have no business joining NATO. NATO has no business in existing at all anymore. But here you go. The House approved a resolution on Monday that expressed support for Finland and Sweden joining NATO exactly 2 months after the Nordic countries submitted applications to become part of the military alliance amid Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The resolution cleared the House in a 394-18 vote, with only Republicans voting in opposition. 2 Democrats and 17 Republicans did not vote. So here are the Republicans that voted no. I'm not going to list them because I don't really give a crap. It's a very non-significant vote. The one thing about you have to understand about this Republican opposition, and I don't want to hear people saying that the Republicans are more anti-war than the Democrats. That is not really true. What is true is that every cycle of bipartisan politics, every cycle of the duopoly, carries one party having the majority of the other. Usually, there's never a draw. It doesn't usually happen. And with that said, whichever party happens to be on the quote unquote outside, meaning the minority party, they end up taking more oppositional stances because there is no risk to it. So you'll have more Republicans flanking certain directions because there's no risk. It's not going to be opposed, actually. There is no real opposition. You're just going to get more and more war. The bills will pass. You'll have these Republicans saying, we're against war, we're for the working class. Well, when they actually are in power, they don't do anything of that sort, right? They just go right along with the program. So you always got to be aware, even people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who have a huge interest in trying to build up their career off the backs of flailing Democrats. You have to understand that these people cannot be trusted. They themselves are doing what the Democrats always do too, which is trying to build up a public relations image that will get them where they want to go in terms of their political career when it is convenient. It is convenient right now for them to do that. There's no pressure on them. There's no pressure on them to actually be held accountable. And so whenever the Democrats are in power, Republicans will flank this way, especially now that there's been this huge disruption with the rise of Donald Trump. That's even given more of an impetus to try to pose as this outsider, because there's also within their base a thirst and a desire for that. So there's many different factors for this, but One of which is not a factor is that the Republican Party themselves, the GOP themselves, as an institution, is somehow less hawkish than the Democrats. That's not what's at play here. What's at play here is political conditions that are varying based upon which side of the duopoly has numerical majority or not. This is how it happens, right? This is how they flank. This is how they kind of try to bamboozle us every single time into believing there's something that they're not. So the resolution also opposes any efforts of the Russian Federation to adversely respond to Finland and Sweden's decision to join the alliance and urges NATO members to satisfy the 2% defense spending pledge that countries signed on the 2014 Wales summit. That declaration said that NATO allies currently spending at least 2% of their gross domestic product in defense would try to continue to do so. So basically, give more money to the military industrial complex. The U.S. is legislating that. It's legislating its dictatorial enforcement of this rule that NATO has made, the U.S. has made around NATO to keep European countries pouring money into the military industrial complex. So even before then, however, on June 9th, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee approved a resolution by voice that called on NATO to quickly grant membership to Finland and Sweden. So this is in the works, right? House Majority Leader Sten Hoyer expressed support for the resolution during debate on the House floor on Monday, saying that the 2 extraordinary new members will be added to the European community and underscoring the value of the countries will bring the alliance. Together, Finland and Sweden will add substantial capabilities to NATO's collective defense and make the Baltic region much more secure against Russian aggression. But much more than that, they will add value because of their values to our alliance. What they're really saying is cha-ching, cha-ching. Now we got Finland and Sweden committed to ramping up austerity in their countries so that they can fund our war against Russia, which will likely lead to some kind of escalation on the nuclear front. So they don't say that directly, but that's what they're doing. That's what's happening. Vladimir Putin must not win this war, not only for the sake of Ukrainians in the extraordinary bravery and the leadership of Zelensky. This is what liberals have become. This is what Democrats have become. We must send a message to dictators around the world that this action is not acceptable and will be opposed to victory by the free world. We must defend the hard-won principle and international laws and norms that a nation cannot simply invade and seek to conquer territory from a neighbor by force. So this is the Democrats using anti-war rhetoric to promote more war. This is the Obama effect. This was something perfected under Obama. Obama talked about dumb wars and how dumb wars must be opposed and how we can't be troubled by dumb wars, right? We have to make wars smarter. We have to do wars smarter. And he used anti-war rhetoric during his campaign to confuse people into thinking that he was somehow anti-war. That is what's happened. Now it's become, right, with Russiagate and the new Cold War, it's become even more egregious in the sense that now anti-war rhetoric more directly saying things like, we need to stop Russian aggression and stop a country from invading unilaterally another country. I mean, there's not even any hesitation with that because these Democrats know that their base is not going to do anything to them. Their base is not thinking about wars in the way that they should. And they're not thinking, well, actually what you're doing with regard to Russia is a war, is a proxy war that could lead to a very dangerous hot war. And also, how many dozens upon dozens upon dozens of wars have the U.S. waged? And is continuing to wage multiple wars. Somalia, right? We can go on and on and on. Somalia, the drone wars in Pakistan. We can go. There's just wars happening all across the world led by the United States to some degree. And we're supposed to believe that it's just Russia, right? It's just Russia. So he keeps going on and on and on and on and on. We look at this. Finland and Sweden have well-trained armed forces, sophisticated modern weapon systems, and have committed to allocating 2% of their gross domestic product to defense spending. Both militaries are highly interoperable with NATO's forces, having participated in numerous NATO-led operations from Afghanistan, Iraq, Bosnia, and Herzegovina to Kosovo, aka these last three being the destruction of Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, and Iraq. So this guy, the House Majority Leader in Congress, this guy, this Democrat, Steny Hoyer, right? He's notorious. He's an establishment hawk. Steny Hoyer is saying that Finland and Sweden were so loyal with Iraq, with Afghanistan, and with the destruction of Yugoslavia that of course they should join, and it'll be amazing for NATO, and it just makes sense. While at the same time saying that another country shouldn't be unilaterally invading Ukraine, that Russia should not be unilaterally invading Ukraine. And then he cites the fact that NATO unilaterally invaded those three countries, and that's why it's good for Finland and Sweden to join. I mean, that, to me, that's just absolutely despicable. This is the kind of logic, this is the kind of war propaganda we are fed by the political class, especially the Democrats, which is the war party at this point. The Democrats are doing it in the Squad. There's no opposition from the Squad on this. None. They haven't spoken out about increasing the military budget based on Russia, aggressive maneuvers against Russia and China. They've spoken out zero against that. I don't even know the last time I've heard Russia or China come out of the Squad's mouth. I don't remember that. The world has been embattled in a proxy war that could lead to a global confrontation at a world war-like scale. And I haven't heard the so-called most progressive members of Congress say anything about it that's useful. I'm sure they've said things that go along with the program. But policy-wise and any kind of opposition, I've heard zero from the Squad. And with this resolution to support Finland and Sweden, you know that every single member of the Squad voted for that. Every single one voted for Finland and Sweden to be allowed to join NATO, even though Russia has been very clear, and the Squad cannot be ignorant of this. No one in the establishment can be ignorant of this. Even the establishment, the U.S. establishment, no matter how much hubris, no matter how much arrogance, it listens to what the other side says, so it can propagandize about it, so it can tell us and spin the words and tell us all these lies about it. But what Russia has said is that this is a red line. This is a red line that could lead to nuclear exchange, and that Russia is more than willing to militarize its border with nuclear weapons in order to protect and defend its sovereignty. And the Squad seems to not care at all about that. They don't care. They don't care. They just go along with the program. And you have to ask yourselves, well, why? Why do they do this? Well, it's quite easy to understand why they do this. They do this because it's good for their careers, and they actually are not progressive, right? This whole idea that a Democrat, anyone who's in the Democratic Party, could cross Democratic Party establishment lines on interests that are irreconcilable, on policies that are irreconcilable, that you cannot maneuver and reform around without angering the establishment, which is granting you this seat, which is allowing you. When Nancy Pelosi said, oh, counting on my fingers, what was that, for 60 minutes? She said this. Oh, yeah, what is there, 5 of them? Right? When she says that, it's not just that she has disrespect for the Squad. She's literally saying, no, you are allowed in this space. We are tolerating you, and we can end you whenever we want. They did it to Bernie Sanders twice. We can end you whenever we want. They did it. They ended his presidential choices. They don't care that there's a minority in Congress. They don't care. Of course, they'd like to see them lose. They don't agree with Pelosi, Schumer. They don't agree with the Squad on anything in terms of politics, except for war. So here is where you have this war kind of consensus that has existed among the duopoly for so many decades. And of course, it came to a head with the invasion of Iraq. But this consensus has existed for quite a long time. And when it comes to war, and also when it comes to policies that actually don't challenge the banks. They don't challenge capital. That's what usually everyone agrees on, even the squad. There are policies that they don't rail against. They don't rail against most things, right? They try to promote change on domestic issues, but generally they are silent about the ways in which both the US government funds, like gives incredible amounts of stimulus to the banks while destroying the lives of everyone else. And they're especially silent on this question of war and peace. They never challenge the military-industrial complex in a way that's significant. Never. Only when it is convenient, right? When Donald Trump was president, you remember Ilhan Omar? She took to task, right? Elliot, whatever his name is, about his record with what was it? The Contras and whatnot. His record, his brutal record, in Latin America. Elliot Abrams, that's his name. So she took to task Elliot Abrams, right, during the Trump administration. Haven't heard the squad take the task the Biden administration on this proxy war on Russia. What's the difference? Back then, Elliot Abrams, he was a huge key force in arming murderous proxies of the United States to slaughter people in Nicaragua, Guatemala, Central America, El Salvador, and also sanctioning Venezuelans to the point where thousands upon thousands of people die. What's the difference with Russia? What's the difference? The United States is funding and arming proxies, many of them far right, many of them just as right wing, if not neo-Nazis, to the Contras, right? Why isn't there this same taking test? They should be sitting on the Senate floor, the House floor. They should be holding hearings, indicting Joe Biden as a war criminal. That's what anyone who considers themselves progressive in Congress should be doing, but none of them do it. So none of them are progressive. And so as the squad was supporting more war, they were also this gets me every time. This happens all the time. I can't stand talking about it. It makes me sick to talk about this. But they, of course, were doing their whole performance at an abortion rights rally outside of the Supreme Court on July 19th. As I pull up the graphic to that, make sure you like this video, continue to share it, hit that subscription button, notifications, bell, and of course, please do support me at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. That's the best way to support this work. Hard times out here. People have been unfortunately leaving, and I'm still trying to boost my capacity to keep at my goal. So please do support. But back to the squad. So as the squad was doing this, as they were supporting war, as they were saying, yes, NATO, yes, we love you. We want more of you. We want more NATO members in an institution that's defunct and illegitimate and that has only caused the death and destruction of numerous societies and millions of people. Keep expanding NATO. That's what the squad was raising their fist for. And then they put on a performance. They put on a performance on July 19th. And I want to show you the video that everyone has been talking about. It's the video of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And Ilhan Omar also did this, but I'm not going to show both. It's okay. You get the picture. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was escorted by police. She was arrested along with this woman, along with others, along with other members of Congress. Arrested, yes. But check out, let's just put on the volume. Just check out what she's doing. Sorry, check out what she's doing here. All right, so let me just put it on. Check it out. So I don't know if you could see from that video that not only were the police gently escorting AOC, the rest of the Congress members, and that other person who was with AOC there, gently escorting them. I'm going to try to fast forward. You get a clear view of her hands because this was going around. And first, here you see there's a little bit of a performance here. She knows the cameras are on her. Smile for them, get a good shot. People are watching you. Oh, there we go. Look at that. So she put her hands behind her back as if she had cuffs or zip line or whatever, or wire. Police don't just use cuffs, but there was nothing on her. Nothing here, right? So she was being gently escorted. This was kind of premeditated. There were announcements that there probably would be arrests. They were blocking traffic. The Capitol Police knew it. This was more of a performance. I don't want to hear from people who've been in movement spaces, who have organized protests, who've been to protests, that this was somehow some kind of genuine, spontaneous thing and that the police were just cracking down. I've been to protests like that. I've seen protests like that. I've experienced that. That's not what happens. I've been arrested in my life before, not for political reasons, though. It was back when I was a kid. I was 11 years old. I was arrested before. That's not how it goes. I was not treated like that. I was stopped and frisked before. I was treated much worse when I was stopped and frisked when I was in high school. Much worse than this. Much worse. So you get the picture here. She's pretending to have cuffs on. And the New York Post, I hate the New York Post. It is, but I want to show you how she responded, because the New York Post published her response. And I think her response is even more, incredibly insulting than even just the act of the performance. The performance to me is just counterproductive. It creates a scene where none needed to exist. I am not opposed to the squad taking a firm position on abortion rights. I'm opposed to the fact that every time they take a firm position, it's always off the backs of very little activity that will amount to any real kind of change. Protesting outside the Supreme Court is really not going to do anything. You are Congress people. You should be doing Congress people things and trying to codify Roe v. Wade. But that should have happened years ago, before the squad even existed. And they're not even willing to challenge the fact that the Democratic Party has done nothing about this. But I want to show you how she responded, right? In the New York Post, it's a right-wing rag, but sometimes it does have good reporting, especially when they can report on those that they dislike, which is always the Democrats, right? Especially the squad. So here's what she said in response to being mocked about this. Putting your hands behind your back is best practice while detained, handcuffed, or not, to avoid escalating charges like resisting arrest. So this is even more incredible. This to me makes me so angry, because how many times have we seen real legitimate activists, people be arrested and then are imprisoned without bail or with bail that's too high for them to meet? It takes a long time to meet it. People go broke trying to meet it. How many times have we seen people literally be assassinated for their political activity or imprisoned for life? To have AOC say that her actions, putting her hands behind her back, had political significance, that she was somehow allowing herself to be more safe and not get extra charges. Does she think we're stupid that she was going to be charged with anything at all? Have you ever heard of the Capitol Police charging a congressperson with a crime? That to me is absolutely ridiculous that anyone could say that with a straight face. And this isn't even to mention the fact that she raised her fist. She raised her fist. I don't even have it up anymore. I could bring it back up maybe. She raised her fist. She raised her fist after she was being, I'll bring it back up. I want to prove to everyone that the record is clear that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Ilhan Omar, they both did it, raised their fist while they were being so-called escorted away. So here she is again. I'm not even going to turn the sound on again. Here she is. She's walking, she's smiling. The camera's on her. She's smiling. And there's the fist. There it is. Let's go back. Sorry about this. I don't like to max screen this. There's the fist. There's the fist. She raised her fist. So how could she say that putting her hands behind her back would have prevented her from getting charges? Literally raising your fist as an ordinary person, a working class person, a black person, raising your fist while being apprehended is likely not just to get you a resisting arrest charge. It's also likely to get you beaten down, probably pretty bad too. So to me, it's just so insulting. This is beyond just, this is not how anyone called progressive or socialist or leftist should be behaving. You shouldn't. You should know better. But when the cameras are on and your career is important and you're a Democrat, this is what you emphasize. You emphasize optics. The Democratic Party is almost principally about optics. It's about funneling and fueling a certain kind of optics to push down our throats endless war, endless austerity, and absolutely nothing of progress for the masses of people. Working class people just suffer more and suffer more. Black people, oppressed people all across this country and around the world are supposed to suffer more as a party that says they are dedicated to justice and to Medicare for all and to healthcare, to jobs. They're supposed to be the ones who are dedicated to working people. They play it up all the time. The Squad is the biggest now purveyors of this message because the establishment Democrats gave that up a long time ago. But the Squad now says, oh no, we're actually for these principles. And then they do stuff like this. Then they do stuff like this where, yeah, you should be serious about Roe v. Wade, but you should be trying to either get rid of your party or make some kind of concerted effort to help people understand that their so-called party that they vote for every single election cycle actually has a lot of blame casted upon it when it comes to this issue alone. Democratic Party is no friend of women, of queer people, of trans people. They're not any friend. I was talking to a client about this recently because they are suffering from a lot of confusion about this and a lot of stress about how there's a lot of ramped up attacks and rhetoric and possible legislative setbacks for trans people. And there's a lot of confusion. Out here in New York, there's a lot of confusion about, okay, well, I got to get the Democrats in, right? It's kind of like the narrative we always hear. Got to fight with the Democrats, fight for them, give them all of our support because we have to stop the evil thing coming. And it's a really tough negotiation because, just talking, you just talk a little bit and you realize that most people understand that they're not going to get anything back anyway. They're just trying to stop the bad thing from coming. They're trying to stop the scary Republicans, knowing that the Democrats aren't actually there to support them. They're not actually going to push through any economic or any kind of policy at all that will benefit them. And that should give people real pause for this continuing suicidal political cycle that much of the left is on, where they just give Democrats support over and over and over again without question because they fear the Republicans. Fear of the Republicans is only going to get us more Republican-like policy, which is in effect Democratic Party policy, because the two parties see eye to eye on most things. Actually, they see eye to eye on all of the material things that actually affect your life on a day-to-day basis, while cosplaying concern about so-called social issues, so-called what some people call cultural issues, really ideological issues. Because when we talk about the institutional policies, when we talk about how they wield power, well, on cultural issues, on racism and white supremacy and gender and all. They're all the same, because things keep going the same direction. And the Democrats and the Republicans, especially the Democrats, don't put up a fight, and the Republicans know that they can fight for what they want because their base is fine with it. They're energized. But the Democratic Party base is a captive base. It's working class people, it's black people, it's oppressed people of various nationalities, it's LGBTQ people. It's people of all kinds of backgrounds that identify with a semblance of values toward justice and this tradition that somehow the Democratic Party has been the party that has represented civil rights, that has represented workers' rights, represented the rights of gay, trans, queer, etc. people. But they don't do anything about it. They don't put up a fight. And then when they do fight, they're fighting for $840 billion for the U.S. military. They're fighting for NATO to expand. They're fighting for Finland and Sweden to become the catalyst of a third world war. That's what they're fighting for. They're not fighting for the issues they even pander to. So it's much worse than even you could imagine. Most people think it's just the Democratic Party is incompetent. They're negligent. They're hypocrites. No, it's worse than that. The Democratic Party is lying its way into mediocrity, and it's lying its way into dragging us into endless war, endless austerity, and the preservation of an empire that is coming apart at the seams. That's what they're doing. So that's what's up with the squad. This U.S. militarism right now is unhinged, and I just want to share with you, one very, just one last point about this. This military budget increase is not just about Russia. It's a big part about Russia, but it's also about China. And the squad also has said, they say nothing good about China. The only time I've ever heard the squad talk about China is when Ilhan Omar shares some nonsense on Twitter about Uyghurs in China being oppressed, right? Or it's AOC in 2019 signing on with Ted Cruz a letter to the NBA saying, "Oh, the NBA needs to decouple from China in order to stand up for human rights in Hong Kong." Funny enough, their stunt that they pulled at the protest, the abortion rights protest, that's a stunt that's pulled by Hong Kong opposition protesters, or was during the 2019 riots. They would often pretend like they were being apprehended violently by putting their hands behind their backs and then so-called resisting arrest, committing violence against police officers. And then they would say, "Oh, well, that was us being repressed." So funny enough, the AOC has some actual commonalities with these color revolutionists. Now, I'm not going to go so far and call the Roe v. Wade protest a color revolution. I will say that a lot of their pandering to the issue is for electoral purposes. It is all about the midterms, but it certainly isn't a color revolution. You don't wage a color revolution inside of the United States. That's not what happens. So we don't have to make that comparison so direct, but it's important to note the similarities there because it means that there's political significance to a relationship between the two, meaning that AOC and the squad are more likely to support war on China via proxy wars and color revolutions, aka Xinjiang and Hong Kong, than they are to support anything substantial or even oppose anything substantial when it comes to the question of war and peace. Exhibit A, Nancy Pelosi, it's been leaked that she may be visiting Taiwan next month. Now, in April of this year, she also vocalized a desire to go to Taiwan and meet with authorities there. China went ballistic, and for a good reason. China was very angry, and the establishment was divided on this. because a visit from someone as high up on the establishment radar, who is really one of the most influential ruling class politicians in the United States, for them to go and represent the United States and visit with authorities in Taiwan, the separatist DPP party and their president Tsai Ing-wen, that would be such a provocation. It is likely to be seen as a recognition of an independent, quote unquote, Taiwan, and lead to a response from China. So there was obviously some consternation about that. This was April. The special military operation that was happening in Ukraine, Russia's special military operation, had just really started. And they didn't want that smoke. But Pelosi said, okay, I won't go. But now she's thinking about going in August, and China's saying the same thing. You go, there will be consequences. This is a blatant violation of the One China principle, the One China policy, the 3 joint communiques. This is a blatant violation of China's sovereignty. We will do something. And once again, you have Henry Kissinger coming out and also saying, cool it, stop it. The Global Times reported on this. No one's really reporting on this. Kissinger warns Biden on China ties amid Washington's enhanced provocations against Beijing. Consequences would be, quote, fatal and unbearable, end quote, for Biden. So Henry Kissinger is commenting on all of this, right? All of these provocations. But the squad isn't. So see that contrast there? The squad doesn't say nothing to Nancy Pelosi when she considers doing something that might cause a global confrontation to a World War III like scale. She doesn't say, they don't say anything. But Henry Kissinger will. Someone who enthusiastically organized a coup, helped organize a coup, a CIA coup in Chile, someone who enthusiastically bombed Vietnam and Laos to the Stone Age. He is willing to do this. So the Global Times says Joe Biden's administration has been testing China's bottom line on bilateral relations in the Chinese mainland's staunch determination to reunify with Taiwan Island, with more frequent maritime provocations and U.S. politicians' interactions with Taiwan authorities, Chinese observers said on Wednesday. They said the consequences for the Biden administration will be fatal and unbearable if this continues. I mean, this is strong language, very strong language coming from Chinese media. They believe U.S. former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger is warning Biden against, quote unquote, endless confrontation with China because he perceives this to be true. With the Democratic Party facing great headwinds in the midterm elections amid Biden's new low public approval rating, Chinese observers warn that the Biden administration would enhance provocations against China and that China needs to prepare for sudden changes in bilateral relations that might happen overnight, and that incidents even more serious than the 2001 mid-air collision involving a U.S. plane and a Chinese fighter jet near Hainan province might occur. In an interview with Bloomberg on Tuesday, that was a couple of days ago, 99-year-old Kissinger said geopolitics today requires Nixonian flexibility to help diffuse conflicts between the U.S. and China, as well as between Russia and the rest of Europe. And Biden should be wary of letting domestic politics interfere with the importance of understanding the permanence of China. So Henry Kissinger is saying, yo, if you want to fall, if you want to be an empire that falls soon, sure, keep going. But if you need to understand the permanence of China to avoid such a fate. Kissinger said it's important to prevent Chinese and any other country's hegemony, but that is not something that can be achieved by endless confrontations. The same day as Kissinger gave out his warning, the USS Benfold, a U.S. Navy destroyer, made a transit of the Taiwan Straits, a third provocative maritime activity by the warship near China in just 1 week, with analysts believing it is rare that a U.S. warship would consecutively sail into the waters off the Shisha Islands, Nansha Islands, and then through the Taiwan Islands. They said such actions will probably become routine as the U.S. is enhancing its provocations against China. I haven't heard any of the squad say anything about this. Pelosi's visit or any of these any of these warship crossings, haven't heard anything. Similar actions, namely a U.S. warship departing from the base of Yokosuka, Japan, traversing more than one maritime region around China to flex its muscles, will probably become routine, Zhang Shuifeng, A Chinese military expert told the Global Times on Wednesday, adding that operations like this could lower the cost in provoking China. Also on Tuesday, the PLA Navy's aircraft carrier Shandong was spotted sailing through Taiwan Straits, followed by what seemed to be a supply ship, media on the island of Taiwan reported on Wednesday. U.S. politicians have also tried creating tensions on the Taiwan Straits as media revealed that U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi plans to visit Taiwan in August after an aborted April visit. Liu Shang, an expert on U.S. studies at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, told the Global Times on Wednesday that the U.S. made increased provocations recently because it is testing China's bottom line on the Taiwan question, as they may have doubt about China's strong will for achieving national reunification. So Kissinger is warning that this is a problem. The U.S. is doubting China's resolve. The U.S. hasn't waged a war anywhere in decades, is not engaged in any war at present moment, has a population that is almost 100% unified against any assault on the sovereignty of China. And yet, the United States is underestimating China's resolve. Seems like a bad idea. On July 9th, Chinese State Counselor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi told U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken in Bali that the three China-U.S. joint communiques are the real guardrails for bilateral relations. The development direction of China-U.S. relations is in danger of being further led astray, Wang said. He noted that the fundamental reason for this is that there is a problem with the U.S.'s perception of China, and its policy based on this perception has naturally deviated from the right track. Liu said he advised the U.S. not to keep moving on with the test, and the U.S., whose international prestige is already in shaky state, would face a fatal blow if its provocations drew a strong reaction from China. Basically, like, yo, we will end this. You will not come out of this looking good. And it's true, they won't. Short of the U.S. dropping nuclear weapons, the United States cannot come out of this looking good. Kissinger's core message is that great powers have to find a way to coexist, and endless confrontations would only disrupt the entire international order that was established after World War II, adding that Kissinger's warning to Biden was that he could see the possible fatal consequences. The sense of crisis and vulnerability of the U.S. government after the failure of COVID-19 response has somewhat resulted in its current basic diplomatic pattern of flexing its muscles whenever and wherever it can in order to hide its old, fragile image, Liu said. Biden's Democratic Party is in an increasingly weaker position domestically and internationally, analysts said, especially with the coming midterm elections in November. I predict the Democratic Party is for sure going to lose control of the House of Representatives. And so China is looking at this and saying, yeah, they're not doing too good. Chinese experts, noting that some provocative moves from Biden administration against China comes from a need to help the Democrats save their situation. So we have the low approval ratings, right? And you have China being put on the U.S. State Department list as a tier 3 country on human trafficking. Meanwhile, the U.S. literally reinstituted slavery in Libya after overthrowing that government. But yet it's China with the forced labor and the human trafficking issues, right? That's what we're told. So basically, China is saying that what's possible right now is that with these warships sailing through, with the United States constantly violating the One China principle, with Pelosi's potential visit, with all of these factors coming to a head, with the United States in this desperate position, the Democratic Party as the ruling party in a desperate position, they're using China as a domestic chip, and Henry Kissinger is saying, wait a minute, you do not put at risk the entire empire for the particularities of one party or another. Henry Kissinger is all about self-preservation here. Henry Kissinger is not saying, oh, we need peace. Of course we need to confront great powers, but we need to do it in a smart way. But the United States doesn't listen to people like Henry Kissinger anymore. The United States is not, it doesn't have that capacity anymore. The United States is on a runaway train toward a collision with China. And the squad doesn't say anything about this. They never say anything about this, ever. The Democrats forget about it. The Democrats, Steny Hoyer, these establishment shills, these hacks, they are going and leading. They are going for this, and they are leading these efforts. They are leading the provocations and aggressive moves toward Russia. And Biden is definitely leading this very aggressive posture toward China. This is the war that the U.S. empire wants. And we need to be very clear about that. We need to be clear. This is what they want. It's not what we want. Although public opinion, unfortunately, is not in our favor when it comes to Russia and China. So there's a lot of people primed to be okay with more military spending and even a potential conflict. It only changed with the Russia special military operation in Ukraine when people's pocketbooks, when people's income, when people's ability to survive economically became affected. But I haven't heard anything about we need a negotiated settlement around Ukraine in order to bring about peace, right? That's not really what's on the table. The discourse doesn't allow for it. We are stifled and suffocated. This isn't the land of free speech. This is the land where social movements go to die. This is the empire organized in a complete counterinsurgency warfare position to conduct an endless assault on any movement that tries to arise, which has the potential of maybe becoming something that can lead us in a positive direction, a revolutionary direction. That's been the United States throughout its whole history. It's been one of the most effective regimes at doing that. So it's no surprise that Israel and Saudi Arabia get fist bumps from Joe Biden because they've learned everything they know from the United States and they've got it. They got all of their arsenal, their military armaments from the United States, or they get military aid to develop their own. So this is where we're at right now. The squad is not our friend. They're not allies. They are Democrats. And this is what the Democratic Party is. It's the war party. It's the party of imperialism. And imperialism is in crisis. And imperialism has no way out of this crisis in the world view of imperialism but endless war. And that is being pushed down our throats, even as millions upon millions and millions upon millions of more people are thrown into precarity, are thrown into poverty, are thrown into the risks of homelessness, of this incredible amount of debt. Even as we have awareness of the worsening conditions here, we don't have any politician really fighting for peace. We don't even have anyone that's willing to stand up for a 10% decrease in the military budget advocated for by Barbara Lee, who, since she opposed the war in Afghanistan, was really the only Democrat to do so. Since then, she's been on board too, especially with the Russia stuff. But she's the only one trying to sponsor this through, and you don't even have the squad coming on board for a 10% decrease. They might have verbally at one point, sure. I've seen them support that. But when the going is tough, nothing happens. They don't fight for it. They're more likely to do these kind of optics stunts, these stunts that are just completely and totally rife with these optics around issues that are better politically. Like Roe v. Wade is important. Abortion rights are important. I'm in favor of abortion rights. I think the United States should go the route of what humane socialist countries have done in the past and in the current moment. You have in China, right? The situation in China with abortion is that it's legal for everyone, and they've just had to restrict it now because, similar to the Soviet Union during the 20s and 30s, what's happened in China is that younger and younger people are in need of more and more abortions, and it's actually becoming a health risk because there are health risks involved with multiple abortions. It can be a health risk. So now they're trying to restrict abortion around certain guidelines. And of course, it was in the media that, oh my God, I think this was last year. Oh God, China is restricting abortion. No, but in the United States, there's just bans of abortion everywhere, bans, and it's all political. It has nothing to do with health. There's nothing to do with, oh, well, maybe the United States is going to meet people's needs, also address the crisis of sexual assault, of rape, address some of these crises. So maybe there's less demand for abortion. So you can have a situation like China where it's legal, but there are restrictions based on, well, we obviously need to be doing something else if people are getting 3, 4, 5 abortions. I was reading an article that, some people are getting 3, 4, 5 abortions within like a 5-year span. starting at the age as young as 12. And so that has real consequences for your body, right? And so China is trying to protect the health of women, of female, of their female women population, as well as anyone who is seeking this out, and their families. But in the United States, you just have ban after ban after ban after ban, right? Now Roe v. Wade, it's been stripped. It's gone. And it's being used as a political issue for elections. We need a robust response. Like, if you really care about abortion rights, you're connecting it to the right of self-determination, to white supremacy, to capitalist exploitation. That's what revolutionaries do. We don't just say, oh, we're for abortion rights and we're just going to fight for that only. No, because no issue on its own stands alone. Anyone who has a critical thinking brain on the left understands that these issues are interconnected and they all point to a class struggle, and that we need to both uphold these issues in their particular importance and also ensure that we can unify many different issues and peoples fighting for those issues together, so that we can, and that's what a vanguard party seeks to do. That's why you need a party to do that, a real working class party to do that, to bring people together who are fighting for these issues into a unified program, a unified set of demands that then you can coordinate activity around. That's what we need. And the squad isn't serving that at all. They're just going along with the political program of, okay, yes, we need to fight for abortion rights. We're going to pretend that we got handcuffed, and we're going to try to boost the Democrats' chances during the midterm elections. That's not what we need right now. We don't need more of that. So that's the content portion for today's stream, everyone. I'm going to stick around for like 10 more minutes, probably 10, 15 more minutes. While you're here, of course, if you haven't liked the stream, it seems like most people who have come here have liked the stream, if not everyone. So I really appreciate that. Hit that notifications bell, of course, subscribe, share. Continue to share this. It'll be on playback. And yeah, if you can, please do subscribe at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. Things are things are pretty rough right now for people. And so I predict that I predict pretty big losses. I already know. I've already lost this is the gig economy is ridiculous, guys. I've lost like $100 and something $10 this month already. So I'm keep pushing forward with my goal, keeping it positive. This is how it is. This is how it is. This is the situation we're in, and I appreciate all of you who are able to support. I really do appreciate all of your support and for helping keep this work sustainable. So you can subscribe at patreon.com/DannyHaiphong. On Saturday, before I get into the chat, on Saturday, I'm going to be interviewing Kenny Coyle. He is someone who travels. He's a communist. He travels across Asia. He's often in the Philippines. He's often in China. He's lived in Hong Kong. I believe he's lived in Hong Kong. He knows a lot about Hong Kong. He wrote a really great article about Hong Kong. So we're going to talk about Hong Kong. I know that was a request from a lot of patrons and from a lot of viewers here. So we're going to talk about Hong Kong. And that will be Saturday. That'll be Saturday, probably mid-morning. He's all the way across the world. So if you all can spend your brunch with me, brunch it up, get your mimosas or whatever you do during brunch. It'll be probably 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. Please come through. Please join. So I'm going to hit up the chat now to close this out. I also have a comment on Patreon I'll probably read out as well. So let's see. I saw some questions. It says, Danny, do you think the U.S. is definitely going to go into a proxy war with China? I mean, in many ways, it kind of is. It has been of course, at a lower level than what's happening with Russia, because Russia proactively said, okay, we need to conduct a special military operation to stop and prevent Ukraine from going a certain direction and destroying the Donbass region, right? Completely leveling it and then moving toward a potential confrontation with Russia. I believe that was the reason why Russia did it. So at a lower level, at this moment, everything from the way that the United States has supported through covert means the so-called Uyghur exile community, the National Endowment for Democracy funding these organizations to wage an international campaign of defamation and propaganda that has justified sanctions and has justified just these endless provocations. I believe is tantamount to a proxy war. Hong Kong was even a little bit more extreme because these NED organizations conducted organized violence on the streets and tried to destabilize Hong Kong's government, its local administration, and it failed, and China defeated it. And I think that's also tantamount to a proxy war. But I do think that the overall general direction here with regard to Taiwan is actually not a proxy war, because I do believe that when it comes to Taiwan, because Taiwan is in this one China sort of is recognized internationally as a part of China, as with the one China principle. There's no real proxy war route, right? There's no proxy war route because Taiwan already has a local administration that is fueling separatism, and the United States has already been building up militarily in the Taiwan Straits to provoke China. So really, there's only one more step left. There was no real proxy war. There's just been a build up toward a hot war. And so the last step is formal recognition, which Pelosi's visit is dangerously towing a line in that direction, And I believe that is why there's so much concern about it. So I think that the direction is really a war, and there already has been a de facto proxy war in many different areas against China. It's just that the United States hasn't had the capacity to mobilize Europe, to mobilize hasn't had the capacity to mobilize the Asia Pacific like it has Europe. The Asia Pacific is really integrated with China, while Europe is very integrated with Russia, but Europe is the poodles of the United States' empire. And so it was much easier with the NATO alliance as its catalyst to escalate a proxy war much more effectively and quickly. Effectively is a strong word, actually, but more quickly. Ware said, do you have any thoughts on Biden coming down with COVID and how it's being dealt with in the media? I actually just heard about that. I didn't know that he had COVID-19. So, no, I don't have any thoughts about how it's being covered in the media because I've been unfortunately mired in other questions and trying to prepare for this. But it's something I'm going to look into. So thanks for that. But I'm sure it's not good. I'm sure, I heard that Biden had some gaffe about saying he had cancer. Maybe that's because he was talking about COVID. Maybe I've got COVID. I got cancer instead of COVID. Thank you, Big Teal, for saying consider joining us on the Left Lens Patreon and supporting independent journalism. Thank you so much, Big Teal. So thank you, everyone. Why does not anyone talk about solutions instead of bashing people? That's a good question. I mean, I think, going after the squad can be quite lucrative, although it doesn't really touch my algorithm that much. I guess it can hit your algorithm quite nicely. For me, though, yeah, I always have to make sure to put in that this is not just about me being critical of the squad. It's about forwarding the fact that we need and promoting the fact that we need a real socialist alternative, that we need a political party, arguably a working class party that can bring together our forces into a real vehicle that can start to develop the rudiments of what hopefully will become a socialist struggle, a real socialist movement, where we'll have to also then fight out which direction that socialist movement will go in. So we have some steps to go into, but without a break from the Democratic Party, I just don't see that happening. And so, yeah, I think we need to be critical, but we also have to always make sure we're pushing that point, because without that, our criticism ends up going into the void as just, just like a facts based analysis with some feeling behind it, which can be informative and feel nice. But certainly, a lot of people want to know, well, what is the direction then? And what should I do about it? And I think we all have our different roles and what we should do about it. Some of us will be more on the information end, some of us will be more on the organizing end, and some of us will, need to be kind of helped along in the struggle, whether it's because of circumstances, whether it's because of disabilities, whatever it is. Not everyone will be able to participate in the same way. So I think the solutions, when we talk about solutions over streams, I think it's always a delicate balance between, well, what is our role, and also what should we be raising as the necessary next steps, and then hopefully that allows people to have the necessary discussions in their organizing to make that happen. So, I don't see any more huge questions. No super chats. No super chats. But as I said, guys, Saturday, I think I'm gonna have a call-in episode, maybe Saturday or Sunday, one of those days. But I will be back on Saturday mid-morning with another stream talking about Hong Kong. And I'm sure I'll be back soon after that. I'm going to try to keep doing this on a pretty regular basis. I have a lot of backlog of clips I need to get to make sure I'm clipping videos and whatnot. But yeah, I'm going to continue to try to get guests as well. Like Kenneth Coyle's coming on. I wanted Nixie Lamb. It's going to take a little more time to get Nixie Lamb. She's on the Legislative Council in Hong Kong. Interested, but it'll probably be more next month where I get someone like Nixie Lamb on. And and then I'm going to try to get Brian. I've been in talks with Brian Berletic, Daniel Dumbrill. I'm trying to get those folks on. But a lot of the people I'm trying to get on right now, they're all the way across the world. It's rough stuff. It's rough stuff to work with people's schedules when they are 12 hours ahead of you. It's not even, it's like you're talking to them in the early morning, or you're talking to them late into the evening, and it's super hard to set up a time. I feel like I'm at a disadvantage with my China focus being all the way out here on the East Coast of the United States. It's a disadvantage time wise if this is truly my focus. It's been something I've felt pretty hard, but nonetheless, I remain dedicated, and I thank all of you for coming out. Somebody said Carl Zaw. I've actually been thinking about, I would love to have Carl Zaw to talk about this Taiwan issue. I think I'm going to do that. So thank you, Holly, for that reminder. You said Daniel Dumbrill will be great. Yes. I mean, we just got to set up the time now. And Standing Alone said, will China ever do more control Taiwan more in its desire to be independent, or no? So I don't understand the question too much. I think you're asking, will China ever control Taiwan more? Oh, I see. Will it ever control that desire to be independent or not? I think that China will continue to do what it's been doing, pushing the status quo. And I do think the moment that I think with Taiwan, China understands that no matter how much propaganda it pushes, no matter how much it tries to influence politics on the island, that China has both the will and the power, the will and the ability to to ameliorate that situation. And then I think, in my opinion, this is just my opinion. This isn't necessarily based. This is based, I think, in facts, but it's not necessarily based in what we've heard. But my opinion on how a communist party, right, addresses these issues is that, and how China has addressed a lot of things with the whole biding time, right, is that China understands that ideology can be really fragile. So while more and more people may be ingratiated in separatism because of the ruling party in Taiwan, because of the United States' interference, because generational changes, and this huge anti-China campaign by the DPP, because of all those things, sure, separatist sentiment, especially among certain parts of the population, will grow up. I think China understands, though, that when push comes to shove, when there is a crisis, that could change pretty drastically. Meaning that if there's ever a threat, right? If there's ever a threat to the security of Taiwan, and then, of course, to China as a whole, we'll see how people decide. A lot of times ideology is determined by crises more so than it is by propaganda. Like, people will learn a lot by having to make decisions not based on the propaganda they've been told, but based on the situation in front of them. So I think China is under the impression, and I think that this is correct, that because Taiwan absolutely is no threat to China militarily, and no matter what the United States says, it will never be a threat, and that China's position has always been firm and consistent, that will win out. That will win out when there is a real crisis that's been steadily building. So I think that's the correct position, because anything they do in a more drastic sense would ultimately fuel something worse. And that's also true, that China will be firm and work with the one China principle, but it won't forcefully unify Taiwan right now. It won't, because that wasn't what they agreed upon, and China is abiding by agreements. And I think that's the correct way to go about it at this time. Because it's a very delicate situation. Why do anything else? Why? I wouldn't. I wouldn't. China's is in a good position when it comes to this issue. The United States is desperate. So, anyway, I think that's all, guys. I gotta go. It's 2:30. I said I would be out of here. Thank you so much for coming. If you haven't liked it, like it on the way out. Thank you, Joey, for that nice message. Following my work at bar for years. Appreciate it. I will keep up the good work. I appreciate that you think it's good work. Thank you for supporting me. I appreciate you not going anywhere. Times are tough. A lot of people are leaving, but I appreciate you coming out. So yeah, playback, share the playback, subscribe if you haven't yet to the channel. Patreon's a great place to support me, even though these are hard times, but I'm still pushing through to my goal, and I hope you can support me if possible. Patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. I'll be back with you in a couple days, everyone. Talk about Hong Kong. Should be fun. I hope to see you then. Tentatively 11:30 a.m. Eastern, and you'll definitely hear about it, and it'll be here. So hit the notification bell, because you'll be notified about it when I put it up. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.